Rafah. A name whispered with sorrow, etched in history with resilience. Long before the lines on the map, Rafah thrived as a crossroads. Connecting empires and cultures, it bustled with trade, a tapestry woven from the threads of passing caravans. Ancient Egyptians, Romans, Ottomans all left their mark. This was a place of fertile land where citrus orchards bloomed under the Mediterranean sun and families nurtured deep roots. Life pulsed with the rhythm of seasons, harvests, celebrated with the sound of laughter and traditional songs passed down through generations. But even in this ancient land, shadows of change loomed. The late 19th and early 20th centuries witnessed the rise of competing nationalisms, casting a long shadow over Rafah's peaceful existence. The tremors of distant conflicts began to shake the ground, a prelude to the storms that lay ahead. The year 1948 arrived, forever altering the fate of Rafah and its people. A year that etched itself in their collective memory, a wound that continues to shape their present and future. 1948, the tremors escalated into a cataclysm, the First Arab-Israeli War. Rafah, once a tranquil backwater, found itself on the front line. Families watched in terror as their world crumbled around them. The war brought with it a tide of refugees. Displaced Palestinians, fleeing the fighting in other parts of Palestine, sought refuge in Rafah. The town, already grappling with its own displacement, swelled with their numbers. Resources, already stretched thin, became even more scarce. The war's end saw the birth of a new reality. Rafah, once a single entity, was brutally bisected by a border. The majority of its lands fell under Egyptian administration, while a smaller portion became part of the newly formed State of Israel. Families were torn apart, their homes and livelihoods severed by an arbitrary line in the sand. The war had ended, but for the people of Rafah, a new struggle for survival was just beginning. The trauma of displacement, the loss of loved ones, and the uncertainty of life in a divided land cast a long shadow over the town. Under Egyptian rule, Rafah experienced a period of relative stability. The influx of refugees slowed, and life began to regain normalcy. Schools and hospitals were built, and the economy showed signs of recovery. The Rafah refugee camp was established, a stark reminder of displacement. However, this period of calm was deceptive. Israeli troops on the border reminded of their fragile existence. Life in Rafah was a paradox, rebuilding amidst tension. The people rebuilt their lives, bearing scars and facing uncertainty. 1967. The Six-Day War erupted, shattering the fragile peace. Rafah once again found itself on the front lines of a conflict not of its own making. The town witnessed intense fighting, resulting in further destruction and displacement. This time the consequences were even more profound. With Israel's victory, all of Rafah, along with the rest of the Gaza Strip, fell under Israeli military occupation. The border that had divided the town was erased, but in its place came a new set of restrictions and realities. The occupation brought about dramatic changes to Rafah's social, economic, and physical landscape. The Israeli military imposed strict controls on movement and economic activity. Land confiscations for the expansion of Israeli settlements further squeezed the already limited space available to Palestinians in Rafah. The occupation transformed Rafah from a border town into a densely populated enclave hemmed in by Israeli forces and increasingly isolated from the outside world. Despite these challenges, the spirit of resistance continued to burn brightly in the hearts of Rafah's residents. The late 1980s witnessed the eruption of the First Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. Rafah, known for its history of resistance, played a pivotal role in this struggle for freedom and self-determination. The streets of Rafah transformed into battlegrounds. Stones were met with live ammunition, and peaceful protests were often met with brutal force. Despite the overwhelming military superiority of the Israeli army, the people of Rafah refused to be silenced. The First Intifada marked a turning point in the Palestinian struggle. It captured the world's attention, forcing it to confront the realities of the occupation. The resilience and determination of the Palestinian people, particularly those in places like Rafah, resonated far beyond the confines of the occupied territories. While the First Intifada did not achieve its ultimate goal of ending the occupation, it did succeed in shattering the myth of Israeli control and highlighting the Palestinian people's unwavering desire for freedom. The early 1990s brought with them a glimmer of hope. The Oslo Accords, signed between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, promised a path towards a negotiated settlement and the establishment of a Palestinian state. For a brief moment, there was cautious optimism in Rafah. The possibility of a brighter future, free from the suffocating grip of occupation, seemed within reach. However, this hope proved to be short-lived. The Oslo Accords, while offering a framework for peace, failed to address the root causes of the conflict. The expansion of Israeli settlements continued unabated, and the daily realities of occupation remained largely unchanged for the people of Rafah. The failure of the Oslo Accords to deliver on its promises led to growing disillusionment and frustration. The situation in Rafah and the rest of the Gaza Strip remained volatile, a tinderbox waiting to be ignited. In the early 2000s, Israel began constructing a separation barrier, ostensibly for security reasons. However, the barrier's route often deviated significantly from the Green Line, the pre-1967 border, cutting deep into Palestinian land, including areas in and around Rafah. The construction of the barrier had a devastating impact on Rafah. It cut off farmers from their land, separated families and communities, and further restricted movement and economic activity. Rafah, already reeling from decades of occupation, found itself increasingly isolated and fragmented. In addition to the barrier, Israel also imposed a buffer zone along the border with Egypt, further limiting access to land and resources. The buffer zone, ostensibly created to prevent smuggling, had the effect of transforming Rafah into an open-air prison, its residents trapped in a cycle of poverty and deprivation. The construction of the barrier and the imposition of the buffer zone were just the latest chapters in Israel's ongoing policy of isolating and controlling the Gaza Strip, with devastating consequences for the people of Rafah. The years following the Second Intifada from 2000 to 2005 witnessed a series of devastating conflicts between Israel and Hamas, the militant group that rose to power in Gaza. Rafah, located on the front line, bore the brunt of these conflicts, enduring repeated rounds of bombardment and military incursions. The impact of these conflicts on Rafah's civilian population has been catastrophic. Homes, schools, hospitals, and vital infrastructure have been reduced to rubble, leaving behind a trail of death, injury, and psychological trauma. The repeated cycles of violence have plunged Rafah into a profound humanitarian crisis. The people of Rafah have been subjected to severe restrictions on movement and access to essential goods and services, including food, water, electricity, and medical supplies. The blockade imposed by Israel, coupled with the destruction of infrastructure, has crippled the local economy and pushed the population to the brink of despair. Despite facing unimaginable hardship and loss, the people of Rafah have shown remarkable resilience and determination in the face of adversity. For over 7 decades, the people of Rafah have endured displacement, occupation, conflict, and siege. Their lives have been marked by trauma, loss, and uncertainty. Yet amidst the rubble and despair, the spirit of resilience continues to burn brightly. The people of Rafah have shown extraordinary courage in rebuilding their lives. They have created networks of solidarity, sharing their meager resources. Despite many challenges, they have not given up hope for a better future. They continue to demand their fundamental rights, freedom, justice, and self-determination. Rafah's story is a testament to the indomitable human spirit. It stands as a reminder of the human cost of conflict and the need for peace. Until that day arrives, the people of Rafah will continue to resist and hope for a brighter tomorrow.